I spend a lot of time in other people's shoes. When I approach a character, I really like to get in their shoes as soon as possible because it helps me understand them at a deeper level when I can appreciate right where they're walking. I think I chose to become an actor really early in my life because I liked wearing the shoes of others. Like, I remember my sister had these beautiful pink toe shoes. She was the graceful one. She was this just lovely ballerina. And I remember when she would be away from the house, I would go in her room and I would try on her toe shoes because I wanted to be a graceful ballerina. And I think looking back that maybe I wanted to be in her shoes because I didn't like the shoes that I had to walk in. Like my shoes from junior high, I had these crazy purple high-top tennis shoes. And they're cool now, but they were not cool when I had to wear them because they were hand-me-downs from a neighbor family up the street who just had boys. And if I think about them, I can feel myself sitting in the cafeteria alone, eating my lunch. Known to many mean girls as the weird one in the purple tennis shoes. But the pair I remember the most were these little white patent leather shoes. I wore them in the spring for Easter Sunday, and then I had to wear them again in the fall to my parents' divorce trial. You see, my mom and dad, they couldn't live with each other, but they also couldn't decide where my sister and I should live. So we went to court. And if I close my eyes, I can still hear the sound of those little white patent leather shoes on the tile floor as I walked up to the witness stand. And I sat frozen as I heard the judge ask me the hardest question of my life. Which parent do you want to live with? I know now that trying to make a decision so big while wearing shoes so small can lead you to a lifetime of fear of making any decision because you're just afraid you'll get it wrong. I know now that that much pressure on a little girl can make her live her life afraid that she's going to disappoint those around her. And I know now that sometimes little girls grow up to be actors that want to wear the shoes of others simply because the thought of wearing their own is unbearable.
When I was a kid, my family and most of my extended family called me Junior. Now, I'm sure you can observe that I am a female, and the name Junior actually goes to the male child who's named after his father. Neither of those things are true about me, but that was my nickname. But that's because that was my dad's nickname. And because I looked like him, acted like him, and was probably always glued to his side, they started to call me Junior. Well, truthfully, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, my dad was that guy. When he walked into the room, everybody wanted to be his friend. He was funny. He was business savvy. He always had a joke. He was smart. He was directional. I wanted to be like my dad. I was the epitome of daddy's little girl. So when they called me Junior, I laughed. It made me feel warm on the inside. I smiled. It was a compliment. Until one day, it wasn't. I don't know if it was teenage angst or something, but one day, that nickname, instead of making me feel warm and smile and feel proud, it made me roll my eyes. I was over it. I didn't want to be like him anymore. I mean, I loved my dad, but I wanted my own identity. But it was too late. That name had already stuck. And years later, even to this day, when I go back and I'm around my family, they still say, "Oh, it's Junior. Look at Jada." And I'm thinking, I'm in my 40s, really? But it won't shake. That's what they've called me since I was a little girl. And I wonder if there is an identity, a nickname maybe for you that you kind of feel stuck to. It can happen. Who we were growing up as kids or even before we came to know the Lord at various points in our lives, our spiritual and emotional journey, sometimes we can earn identities and earn nicknames that we can outgrow. Have you ever gone back to maybe a high school reunion or reconnected with old friends and they call you that nickname that your new friends don't know about? Have you ever been around family and they start to tell all the stories about how you used to be when you were a kid and you kind of want to keep those things under wraps? Sometimes I think even as we find God, when we're on that journey to finding Jesus, we go back to our old friends or our old community or maybe even our family that's not saved yet. And we try to show them this new joy we have. And all they do is look at us and say, I knew you back when. Please save all the new life for me. I know who you really are. It can feel like bondage, really. You can't shake this old reputation, this old identity. And I want to encourage you today that even if you feel stuck or defined by your old identity, your old reputation, there is hope for you. God can re-identify you. Well, speaking of identity issues, today we're going to be looking at Rahab. And this was a woman that even if you don't know a lot about the Bible, everybody knows Rahab was the prostitute. I mean, my gosh, she's probably like, can you know my whole story first? It's just a thing that stuck with her. And she really didn't have a whole lot of say in that identity. She was a part of a culture, the land of Canaan, the Canaanites. This was a highly sexualized, highly pagan, anti-God culture. This sounds familiar. This is like all the cultures of the Bible that were not for God, were opposed to God. But the Canaanites took this sexuality thing to a whole nother level. They thought sex was a part of everything. They used sex and sexual activity and sexual symbols to determine weather, to guide their agriculture, to measure success, to give them strategic battle plans in war and peace. It was a strange kind of thing. I mean, they even had worship ceremonies that involved sexual acts. I am not making this stuff up. And so you can imagine that a girl growing up in this culture had a certain identity. There were things that were just normal for her. So it's really not that big of a stretch that Rahab would choose to be a prostitute. We're not going to whitewash this and say she was an innkeeper. Rahab was a prostitute. But it made sense in her cultural context. As a matter of fact, in the Canaanite culture, there were even certain prostitutes that were deemed as sacred, that certain priests and certain high-ranking religious officials would have sex with sacred prostitutes, asking for blessings from these strange gods. So it's not a stretch that Rahab would choose this identity. You may feel like that you grew up in a culture that really didn't give you a lot of choice. You just became a part of what your culture said was normal. And that happens for a lot of us. We can grow up with certain family values and ideals. We can grow up in certain parts of the country or certain parts of the world. We have religious frames of reference that really identify us before we even choose our own identity. And so a lot of times you can feel trapped. You can feel stuck by that. You may have felt like Rahab, you inherited some beliefs that were opposed to God. You may feel like your life was so dysfunctional, so moving away from God, that you don't have any hope to be re-identified by Him. And I want to tell you that there is hope. Spoiler alert, Rahab was not a church girl. You don't have to be the girl that grew up in Sunday school and on the front row and at every vacation Bible school for God to use you greatly. Just because your life may have been described as dysfunctional, just welcome to normal. That's everybody's life. That doesn't mean you're doomed. That just means God has a unique destiny plan for you. So let me bring this home a little bit. You might be wondering, okay, Jada, does this really apply to me? I'm telling you, if you are wondering, can God use the single mom who is just trying to make ends meet? Can God use the stepmom who's just trying to win the affections of her stepchildren and her husband? Can God use the poor girl who was raised by uneducated parents and really feels lost sometimes in this world? Can God use the girl who just got the degree, you're not even sure what it's for? Can God use your corporate ambitions that you all of a sudden feel like don't make sense anymore? The answer is yes, yes, yes. It does not matter the path you've taken up until now. Let God take over. Here's the truth. Even the decisions that you made in your past that might not have been God's preference, he will still use them for his greater plan. So coming to God is not about whitewashing who you used to be and trying to clean up your reputation and your old self. He says, bring your old self. I'm going to use that and make it better and use it for my plan. Here's the truth, ladies, that a non-good girl and a non-church girl who didn't grow up in a perfect, pristine home is used greatly by God. That's what Rahab is. That's who she is to us. And she is not a nameless woman. God mentions her by name, and we get to learn a lot about her. And he makes sure that we know she didn't come up with a perfect background. She didn't come up in the ideal culture, but she was still critical to his greater plan. God can connect the dots on every decision you've ever made. He will take even your mistakes and make sense of it. I am so thrilled that God can take the mess and the mess-ups of my life. He mixes it all up and uses it for mission. And listen, to be used by mission, all you have to do is open your heart. You just have to respond. You don't have to be the smartest, the most intelligent, the most educated. As we get to know Rahab, we're going to see that without church and without Sunday school, without a Bible, she was able to see God and respond. She opened her heart, she heard him, and that's all he needed for him to use her greatly.
One of my favorite memories is the first time I met my soon-to-be in-laws. This memory has stuck so deep in my brain that it's come back to me over and over throughout the course of my life, almost 20 years now that I have been married to Justin. As a Texas born and raised girl, I was thrilled that I was marrying into a ranching family. My sweet in-laws have a ranch in East Texas, and the first time we came to visit, before I'd been there 2 minutes, my father-in-law came up to me and he said, "Hey girl, you want to go with me to check the cows?" Now, I didn't have a clue what checking the cows meant, but I knew that I was under some crazy Southern initiation, and I was not about to fail this test because I was going to marry this cowboy. So I said, "Well, yes, sir, I'll go with you to check the cows." And we jumped on his utility buggy and we darted out to the fence. Now, if you've got cows in Texas, that means you've got a lot of land, and somewhere on that land is a water source. So we were going to check the cows to see if they were getting to water. Now, when we pulled up to that gate, I noticed that in acres and acres of wide open pasture land, this beautiful green lush grass up to our knees, all of these cows, hundreds and hundreds of cows, were walking down this one thin, narrowly cut path, one behind the other, young and old, over and over and over again, walking this long path all the way around to the water. They had all of this wide open land to walk through. Not 50 feet from us was the water. And yet these cows had not merely laid the grass down in the trail, they had rutted deep into the soil, embedded into the dirt of the trail. Now it was just a bunch of mud and clay, and their hooves were getting stuck, but they continued to just walk this path. Now, right about the time I was going to ask my father-in-law why all these cows were walking the same way, going the long way around, he cut over to the right. He drove forward, and back until he cut a new path to the water. Then he turned to the left, drove over to each cow individually, slowly, one at a time, and began to put a little bit of pressure on them. About an hour later, one cow went down the new path, and then another cow went down the new path. And I'll never forget what my sweet father-in-law said in that sweet Southern cowboy voice. He leaned over to me and he said, "Sometimes you just need a little pressure to know there's another way." I thought this was so deeply profound, even though I'm pretty sure he didn't mean it at all like that. Pressure points are the catalyst for change. And pressure points move us into a new way. And I have found so much over my life that some of my greatest bondage is that I just don't know there's another way. If I just knew there was another way, a different way of doing things, well, things might look different. Maybe that's the way it is for us. Maybe there's some place in your life right now where you're saying, this is just the way it is. This is just my personality. It's just genetic. She'll never forgive me. He'll always be this way. And so I challenge us to look at the pressure points in our life that are moving us into this new path, this new way, because this is right where we meet Rahab. We meet Rahab right at the pressure point, when things can no longer stay the way that they have been. Can you imagine the way that Rahab had been walking for years of her life? This is another great visual image of the cows walking down the path. It's the same way that our mind and our brain work. Truly, the messages and the images that we receive that fire together, they wire together. And our brain can just continue to walk down this one trail until something, a catalyst, ruptures that path. Rahab was born into, as an infant, as a child, into a community and a group of people who didn't simply deny a creator God, but replaced him altogether with gods who worshiped sex, who made love a commodity, who oppressed and marginalized her as a woman. This was the course that she walked just because someone said it was this way. What paths are we continuing to take simply because someone has told us this is just the way it is? Somewhere along the way, we have created our own truth, our own version of the story, our own trail that we have cut. Even if it's the long and hard way around, we can just continue to do it because the person in front of us is doing it. Where are the places in our life where we are shaping our own truth? Our truth is a product of the experiences and the environment we were brought up in. As a child, we are truly a sponge. Our brain is soaking in all of these messages, tones of voice, the way that people deal with conflict, the way that people deal with love or not. As we move from childhood into adolescence, we're really just deciding if all of these core beliefs are true or false based on the people who are around us. And then I'm pretty sure in our 20s, we're just test driving all of those beliefs. Colossians chapter 1, starting in verse 9, tells us what thriving looks like according to God. He wants us to be filled with the knowledge of His will in spiritual wisdom and understanding, so that we can walk in a manner worthy of God, fully pleasing to Him, and bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to His glorious might, for our endurance and patience with joy, giving thanks to the Father, who has, now listen to this word, qualified us to share in the inheritance of the saints in His light. He has, another word, delivered us from the domain of darkness, transferred us into the kingdom of His beloved Son, in whom we have redemption and the forgiveness of sins. When we meet Rahab, she has no clue that she is about to go down in history as one of the most faithful women in the biblical narrative. She knows only one thing. She needs deliverance, and she is desperate. Did you know that God wants to deliver you? He wants to deliver us from old ways, old habits, old patterns, all of these messages that have wired together over the course of our life that bring harm to ourselves and others. He doesn't simply want to remove us from a harmful place. He wants to heal us. And the only thing that faith requires is our desperation to finally be at a place where we say, God, this has got to change. This has got to be it. There has got to be another way. Let's take a note from Rahab's playbook. Let's be desperate enough to choose a new way.